We'll have more news later. Time now for the France 24 debate. Less than a week before Donald Trump's inauguration, who does the president-elect pick to interview him? Michael Gove, the pro-Brexit minister whose quick-draw party leadership run scuttled the chances of the now foreign minister Boris Johnson. Gove, who was axed by Theresa May when she won that leadership battle, is back to being a columnist for the Times of London. It's not just who Trump met with, it's what Trump said, calling NATO obsolete, pushing for a hard Brexit. We're going to be asking our panel about the timing of the interview. Before Inauguration Day on Friday, there's Theresa May's big speech on Tuesday, where she's expected to argue in favor of quitting Europe's single market. Just how much will she be able to lean on Washington if it is indeed a hard Brexit? Who's calling the shots? What impact, not just on Britain, but also the rest of the continent? In this, an election year, let's remind ourselves for the Netherlands, France, Germany. Today in the France 24 debate, we're looking at Trump turning out to be Brexit's biggest fan. With us from Strasbourg, Conservative member of the European Parliament, Sajjad Karim. Joining us from London, Andrew Lillico, Executive Director and Principal of Europe Economics. Thank you for being with us here. And in the studio, Labour member Evan O'Connell is an EU affairs consultant for Aspect Consulting.
Hi.
Nice to see you again.
Nice to see
you. The France 24 debate, where you can join the conversation on Facebook and Twitter, hashtag F24debate. NATO's obsolete, as if his tweets and pronouncements don't already own the news cycle. The week beginning with Donald Trump grabbing the attention of EU foreign ministers in Brussels. Plenty of Germany bashing in those two interviews, because he spoke to both Bild and the Times of London. Even talk of a 35% tax on German car imports that aren't made in the USA. But when it came to Britain, it was all sweetness and light.
Brexit's going to end up being a great thing. But I predicted the heat I took was unbelievable. And I said, because people don't want to have other people coming in and destroying their country. I thought the UK was so smart in getting out. Obama said they'll go to the back of the line, meaning if it does happen, and then he had to retract. That was a bad statement.
And now we're at the front of the queue.
I think you're doing great.
Evan O'Connell, I see you shaking your head.
It's a combination of amusement and despair, I think. The thing is, Trump is a showbiz personality, first and foremost. This is theater. What this is a way to make a bit of a splash, rough up some established politicians, including Theresa May.
Including Theresa May.
Including Theresa May, I think. Yeah, absolutely. I see this as a slap, possibly even without getting into conspiracy theories and all the rest. I could see this potentially as a concerted slap by Trump and Murdoch together at Theresa May, perhaps telling her to get her act together when it comes to Brexit.
Andrew Lillico, you agree?
No. I think it's fairly clear that the US is planning to offer the UK a trade deal next year. I think that Trump wants to indicate that it's not that he's against trade altogether. He's merely against trade with low-income, low-standards countries such as Mexico or China, and instead he wants to do more trade with countries like Canada or the UK. So I would say that it's pretty clear that he does want to do a trade deal with the UK, and he wants to signal that.
Wants to signal back, but it is a bit of a provocation having Michael Gove be the man to interview him.
I don't think it's any surprise that Trump likes to deal with people that he sees as having some intellectual affinity with, who are prepared to give him a decent hearing, and I suspect that he would have thought that Michael Gove was such a person. Gove's a long-standing, very skilled journalist. He was a journalist for many years before he was a politician, good at getting big scoops then, good at getting big scoops now.
But big photo ops for Michael Gove, after we've seen those big photo ops for Nigel Farage, is it a way of having a bit of leverage on Theresa May, showing her, hey, these are the folks that I'm friends with?
I don't think so, really. I think that he was talking quite positively about Theresa May. He was saying that he had a letter and she was going to be one of the first people that he spoke to once he was in, and that he wanted to do a quick deal. I don't see any negativity about May in the interview at all.
Well, actually, if I may correct you, the first person that Trump has said that he wants to see, at least according to the Times 2 days ago, is Vladimir Putin. Trump was talking about organizing a summit with Putin in Reykjavik not long after he took office. I think those Britons that see the special relationship flourishing with Trump being elected, there are certainly positive signs for the UK. But first and foremost, the special relationship is not with Britain, it's not with Theresa May, it's with Trump's new buddy, Vladimir Putin.
We'll see who he speaks to first. Another reaction, let's listen to that of Ireland's foreign minister. Ireland, a member of the Eurozone, which shares a border with the United Kingdom and which boasts its own special relationship with Washington.
The London Times interview between Michael Gove and Donald Trump was more of a colour piece. I don't regard Michael Gove as being an impartial or indeed disinterested reporter. We look forward, however, to the inauguration of President-elect Trump on Thursday next. He then, of course, will be setting his team together. And I believe it's important that the special relationship between Ireland and the United States continue in the context of the change of administration.
Andrew Luca, what are the chances for that special relationship with Ireland if Ireland is an EU member and you've got a Donald Trump predicting that more states are going to follow Britain out of the EU?
I don't think that there's going to be any reduction in American warm feeling towards the Irish. They've had warm feeling for a very long time. There are a lot of people of Irish extraction in the United States. I would expect them to be continue to be big investors in Ireland. That's been very important in Irish growth, particularly in the past few years. So I don't see there being any diminution in that at all.
The Irish have been careful in choosing their words, but you heard Mr. Flanagan, the foreign minister there, taking a bit of a shot there at Michael Gove.
I guess he's going to be talking his book. What he's wanting to say is that you shouldn't assume too much about how well placed the UK is in terms of its outside options when it's not dealing with the European Union. So the European Union wants, of course, the UK to be in a weak position so it gets as good a deal as it can out of leveraging against the UK. The UK would prefer to have stronger outside options. It's no surprise that he would put things that way.
Evan O'Connell?
I think that actually you inadvertently, Andrew, said something that's quite interesting, which is that when it comes to trade deals, there are many options for many people. And I think that when Trump actually takes office and sits down with his economic advisors, and they explain to him that the EU, even without the UK, represents an economy and a trading partner several times that of the UK. In terms of GDP, I believe, and in terms of indeed trade ties as well, I think that that Mr. Trump may reevaluate his choice to make the UK his first priority in terms of trade deals.
Andrew Lilico, this brings us back to Trump's book, The Art of the Deal, in which he talks about when you go into a negotiation, you know, you scramble a bit the lines of communication, you don't give your game away, you say stuff that gets your interlocutors, catches them a bit off guard. Is all the stuff we're hearing basically just talk?
I don't think so, no. I think the US have said that TTIP is dead. The EU said that TTIP is dead. So I think that when everybody says TTIP is dead, you should probably assume that TTIP is dead. The Americans, I think it's pretty clear what the rationale is for Trump wanting to do a deal with the UK. It's that he doesn't want to be seen as completely anti-trade because he is likely to be talking about some reductions on trade, particularly with Mexico and with China. I don't know whether he's really going to go as far as these big tariffs on everybody that he's talking about. But if he were to do that, he will want some mates in the world. He'll want some trade partners so he's not seen as simply anti-trade. He wants to portray himself as being in favor of fair trade, fair bilateral trade deals. So ones that give a good deal for both sides. And the UK is obviously a very natural partner for that. And the logic of his position is, I think, behind the UK trade deal rather than any machinations and political maneuverings.
All right, last week, the same Boris Johnson who a few months back criticized Trump for his, quote, stupefying ignorance, well, he was at Trump Tower, where he met Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, and the president-elect strategist Steve Bannon. Johnson also making the rounds on Capitol Hill and reporting back to the House of Commons that it all went swimmingly.
The short answer is that my enthusiasm is nothing compared to the enthusiasm of our friends on the other side of the Atlantic. We will get a good deal, but it's got to be a good deal for the UK as well.
Andrew Lilico, is Boris Johnson the right man to be in charge of foreign policy after those comments he made before the election?
I think people politicians recognise the role of politics and that you've got to say certain things under certain circumstances and then you move on. Boris Johnson was born in the United States and has a lot of connections there that people be seen sympathetically that way. He's an American's cliched vision of what a posh British person should be like. So I think that that has a certain charm which will go down better in the United States than it does in some parts of Europe. And I think that he is also seen as being sympathetic for having sided with Brexit, which Trump was in favour of. So I think that he's very well placed.
For you, when he says we will get a good deal, but it has to be a good deal for the UK as well, what are the pitfalls for Britain when they negotiate a bilateral deal with the United States?
Well, I think some of the things that were concerns in respect of TTIP are probably the most obvious areas. So do we need an investor-state dispute settlement procedure? I suspect not in the case of the UK and the US, because we'll trust each other's courts in a way in which the US and the Europeans wouldn't have trusted each other's courts. So we probably won't need that, which was one of the big sticking points before. There's questions about whether you would want to open up some parts of the NHS to additional competition from US firms. I suspect that would be healthy for the US rather than anything else, and that the government might not find unwelcome the opportunity of blaming some trade deal for doing things that they might prefer to do anyway. There's an issue on agriculture, so UK agriculture would need to be quite exposed to US agriculture, probably, but we're going to have to move on and have very different agricultural arrangements anyway. So given that it's going to be a radical transformation of the UK's agricultural support system once we leave the common agricultural policy, I think that the incremental addition of coping with dealing with the US is likely to be less than some people are worried about. I think that there's a deal to be done there, and I think it can be done quite quickly.
Can be done quite quickly. Evan O'Connell?
I agree that it can probably be done more quickly than a deal with the EU. That seems quite clear. When you're negotiating with one partner rather than with 28, you're probably going to get something signed more quickly. That being said, I've sensed a certain reticence among some in the UK in recent days in terms of not going too quickly on this deal. The initial goal, I think, among many in the cabinet was to have a deal ready to sign the day that Brexit happened. I think that now people are thinking, well, actually, no. We want to make sure that the NHS is protected. We want to make sure that environmental norms and so on are protected. Some of the same concerns, indeed, as Mr. Lilico said, that people have had with TTIP. So no, I'm not sure that the UK could negotiate a deal that could be inked and signed on, let's say, 1st of March 2019 or whenever Brexit actually happens.
All right, the tech gremlins have finally been tamed, and we are able to cross to Strasbourg and say hello to, as promised, to Sajjad Karim, Conservative member of the European Parliament. Happy New Year. Thanks for being with us here in the France 24 debate.
Good evening and Happy New Year to you as well.
At the outset of our conversation, we have a split jury here, Sajjad. At the outset of our conversation, we had Evan O'Connell saying that that interview with Michael Gove catches Theresa May wrong-footed. We had in London Andrew Lilico arguing the opposite, that there's nothing wrong in it and that everything's going fine between Ms. May and Mr. Trump. Your thoughts?
Well, the interview itself has very much been the topic of conversation throughout the course of the day today. And I've travelled, in fact, from the United Kingdom to the European Parliament in Strasbourg, and so a number of conversations have taken place. And it's quite clear to the vast majority of people that I've spoken to, they see that as more an observation upon the new American way of doing business than it is of the British way of doing business. If we were to follow what President-elect Donald Trump has said he would like the United Kingdom to do, then effectively we would be walking away from a rules-based society and declaring that we no longer regard ourselves as a nation that abides by obligations that it is signed up to. Now, we as a country have no intention of becoming that type of country, so it may well be an indication of how Mr. Trump may be doing business in the future, but it is not how we as a United Kingdom will be doing business
What
at
rules
any
and
point
obligations
in the future.
in particular?
Well, there's been a very clear statement that there is a desire for negotiations to start for a free trade agreement between the UK and the USA, and indeed for that to be finalised and brought into place immediately at a point when Brexit takes place. The European Commission has made it clear today during the course of the day that that is not a course that any member state can actually undertake, and we ourselves from a UK standpoint have made it clear that we do not sign up to the expressed views of President-elect Trump as to how he sees this process going forward.
Just a quick reaction, because we have to go to the break. Andrew Lillico.
Well, I think that's a wrong interpretation of the treaties, and I think that if we're just going to turn Trump down without even looking at what the details are, I think that that will cause quite considerable reactions within the UK. I think that that's just shouldn't be considered an option. We have to be able to negotiate our own post-Brexit trade deals. I think we should be able to ratify them, provided they don't come in until after Brexit straight away. But at the very least, we should be able to get them to signature-ready state. And if people are saying we can't even talk to anybody else until after we've left the EU, I think that's totally unacceptable. And I don't think the British political establishment and media should put up with that at all.
All right, we're going to pick up on these points when we come back, and also graduate to the big event on Tuesday when Theresa May unveils her strategy or talks about it when it comes to those Brexit negotiations. Stay with us. You're watching the France 24 debate.